Hi everybody, it's Sue again, and can you believe it's week 5? I'm so excited this week because borders are my absolute favourite thing, so I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you. So as usual, I'm just going to take you through all of the stitches we're going to cover this week. Well, I can't believe this is the last week I'm going to be talking you through the blanket. So this is week 5 when you're going to finish your creation. So this is the border week. So I love borders, and I think I'm quite known for borders. I sometimes make them very, very big. This is about a medium-sized border for me, but it's really pretty. And I think it looks a little bit like blossoms. The pink looks sort of very floral, and you've got the little buds almost from the bobbles. So I think it really fits perfectly with this blanket. And as a beginner, don't be worried. You know how to make all of the stitches because you've had loads and loads and loads of practice throughout this blanket. So to start with, I've used this soft grey colour, and that blends really well. Didn't want to put a dark colour first, didn't want it to pop out. So this is a really soft colour to start with, and that's some half trebles. And then we've done some more of those in the green, and then some trebles in the white. And then, do you remember when you did the granny stripe? Well, we actually put some granny stripes around the border. I think they look really pretty. Look really floral. So we've got a couple of rows there, and then we've got a row of double crochet and then another row of that, and then we're finishing with bobbles, and you've had lots of practice with bobbles, and I think it just gives it that lovely almost pom-pommy edging, and it's very, very snuggly. Really, really nice to finish a blanket this way. It does take quite a while to get round, but don't forget that's all you've got to do, just these rows, and you've got your week to do it. So I really hope when you've done it, you've enjoyed making it as much as I have. So as you can see this week, there are no new stitches. So there won't be a new stitch tutorial, but what I am going to do is do a quick tutorial showing you how to pick up the stitches around your blanket and how to work the corners. So if you have a quick look at the tutorial, and then I'll come back to you. Right, so I'm going to start work on the border now, which for me is a really exciting part. I love seeing how the blanket's all grown, and it's almost like adding the frame to your picture, this. I really love working on borders. What I've used here is just a rectangle of a crochet, and this was one of the samples that I made at the very beginning. So I was playing with colour, but wasn't necessarily using the same stitches. But this will just give you a really good overview of how you work the first row of the border. And I've chosen one of the very sort of soft neutrally colours out of the colour palette to work right round the blanket. So we start off at the top. So this is the row that you will have just finished. So you've got some lovely easy stitches for working into. So I've got my yarn, and I made my slip knot, so I'm all ready to go. So I'm just going to put my hook without the slip knot to start with underneath that first stitch. So you can see it's just slotted underneath those two loops of the stitch. I'm going to bring my yarn through, and then I'm going to anchor that nice and securely by putting the yarn round, and that's my first chain. Now the stitch that we're going to work is the half treble. So if you remember from before, we do 2 chains for a half treble, and that's the height of the half treble. I don't do what I often do, is start crocheting with your little end. So pull that over here and make sure you're working from your ball of yarn. So in this stitch, we've got the 2 chain, and that's equivalent to 1 half treble. And now I'm going to work a half treble. So if you remember, it's yarn around your hook, into the same hole, pull through, and then yarn through all 3. Just put that tail out of the way. And now I'm going to make 1 chain. I'm going to go back into the same stitch, and I'm going to work 2 more half treble. So remember, it's through all 3 stitches, yarn round, through, pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn round through all 3. And you can see in that one stitch I've got my 2 chain, which is going to be equivalent to my half treble, 1 more half treble, a chain and 2 half treble, and that's going to be the first corner of your blanket. So now we're just going to work across. Now you'll have 132 stitches to work across. That's how many stitches you should have on your blanket. So I'm just going to work across this swatch quite quickly, and I'm just working 1 half treble into each stitch. So it's a nice stitch for starting your border, and you'll be very used to it because you'll have to use this stitch a few times within your blanket. So let's just go across. So I'm almost at the end, just got a couple more stitches. You can always stop this video because obviously you've got a lot more stitches to work. Now in this last stitch here, I'm going to do 1 half treble and then another half treble, a chain and 2 more half trebles. And can you see that's actually turning me round the corner? So we've added a little corner in there. Just think I've got a slight loose thread from the white from before, so I'm just going to pull that through. Yep, that's better. So we started off, that's your first corner, and this is our second corner. Now this can be a little bit more tricky because here we had all the stitches that were very, very easy to work into, and now we're working down the side of our blanket. So we're working into the edges of the rows that we've already worked into. So just let me get my yarn sorted. So you can see here, this creamy row was a double crochet row. So I'm just going to work into the end of it and pull through. Now, I forgot to put my yarn around my hook then, didn't I? So remember we're doing half trebles, and because I just mentioned double crochets, I totally forgot to wrap my yarn round. So I've wrapped it round, I'm going into the end of that double crochet, I'm pulling my loop up, 3 loops on the hook and through all 3. Now here you can see I've got a 3 chain because there was some V-stitch here, so I'm going to have more space to add stitches. So I'm going to work 2 half trebles here, 1, 2, and then just sort of feel, does that look like it's going to pull tightly? It's important that we don't put too many stitches in, otherwise you'll have a very, very wavy edge, but if you don't have enough then it's going to pull and pucker and be quite tight. So the number of stitches you work down the side will be different depending on somebody's tension, whereas the numbers you work across the top and the bottom, we should all have the same number of stitches. But some people will need to put 3 half trebles into the sides of a 3 chain, otherwise their work will pull. With my tension, 2 trebles seems to work. You can see that's lying really nice and flat. Sorry, 2 half trebles. Now we're going to go into the next stitch here, and this is a double crochet, so I probably only need to do 1. So I'm just going to pull through. Yes, just 1 looks good. And then I'm going to go back to here, which is the beginning of a V-stitch again. So I think I'll need to do 2 here. So I've pulled through. Yes, that's all lying quite flat. Got another chain here, so we'll add 2 into this longer chain at the end of the row. Can you see how that's lying nice and neatly? Now we've come this paler blue. This is obviously some double crochet, so probably only going to need to do one at each end there. So that's one, and then the next one along, we'll do one more. And as I'm picking up these stitches, I always look back and just give it a little pull and straighten to make sure it's lying flat. So let's just do a couple more. Just unwind my wool. So I've got to another V-stitch row where we've got the 3 chain that starts. So let's do 2 in there, 2 of our half trebles, 1, 2, and then the same again here, 1, 2. I'll just do a couple more. I'll just do the stitch into the end of this double crochet, 1. Sometimes it is tricky to get your hook in, but just be firm with it, just poke it through, it will be absolutely fine. It's a lot tougher than it looks. So you can see how that's set, it's really sort of straight, we've got no puckers, it's not wavy, and just really continue like this, working right down the edge of your blanket. And then when you get to the other end, that's when you're going to do your next corner. So in the last stitch of the row, you're going to do exactly what you did here at the beginning. You're going to put 2 half treble, 1 chain, 2 half treble. And then when you're working across the bottom of the blanket, if I just take my hook out, you can see when you first started your blanket, remember we had 1 loop behind, underneath the hook, and 2 loops at the top. Well, there's that 1 loop that you left. So you've got all those loops to very, very easily work into. And then you'll work along here. In the very last stitch, you'll make your next corner, and then you'll work up the side, exactly the same way you have done on this side. And then when you get to this corner, you're just going to do a slip stitch into that very top stitch. And then you'll have been all the way round your blanket. Right, I hope that tutorial was really helpful. But just one thing, before you do start, don't forget all of those tails have got to be neatened before you start to do your border. So hopefully you've done those along the way, but if not, make sure they're all neatened before you start. I hope you have such fun with this, because I really do love borders. And just think about it, it's like framing a picture, isn't it? This is the last step of it, so it's really important, and it just is going to make it look perfect. It really gives it the wow factor. So have a great week, and when you come back next week, we're going to look at, well, you all have your finished blankets, which will be fabulous, and we're going to look about how to block the blanket, so make it look the best it can possibly look, and some extra little finishing touches. So see you next week, have fun.